Welcome to the InJoy podcast, where your new best friends, Shauna and Fevi, share our journeys of joyful discovery.
Join us in a space of bold truth and unfiltered discussion as we discover what it means to thrive.
We welcome you in joy and love. All right, so today we're discussing the experience of people pleasing and how it's impacted our journeys.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what brought this up is, you've heard of like fight or flight?
Yes.
There's fight, flight, and then there's freeze and fawn. So it's actually 4 bodily responses that we get. And how this came up for me is I was like listening to a podcast episode called Crime Junkies. We'll link it in the description. But in this particular episode, an 11-year-old named JC Duggar was abducted as she was walking to school, and no one saw her again for 18 years. And part of her story, she talks about the fact that probably 5 years into her kidnapping journey, her kidnappers gave her a laptop. She had access to email because the kidnapper had impregnated her and she had children. So they was like,
every time you talk about this,
because it really is crazy.
It's a lot.
So she has the kids or whatever, and they're like, oh, we want you to teach the kids because we obviously can't send them to school because we kidnapped you. And so she has access to email, she has access to internet, and she never emailed anybody to come and help her. Never looked up resources about how she could be helped. And so when she got out, everyone was like, oh, wait, so you had the opportunity.
How did she get out?
So the kidnapper, I guess he was having a psychotic breakdown or something, because he started saying God was telling him to teach the people about how to be a godly man and a father to a household of kidnapped people. And so he went to a college, and wanted to rent out their event space.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And so when he got to the event space, JC had gone with him. Yeah, and a black woman was like, something about this don't seem right.
It ain't right, Lord.
And so she invited him back and was like, we can talk about the event space, but come back because I want to learn more about your mission. And when he came back, had the cops right there. So that's how she ended up escaping.
Okay.
But she got asked a lot, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you ask for help? And when she talks about her story, she talks about how she spent a lot of time, her safety measure was people pleasing. So when he asked her to do something, because she didn't want to die, she didn't think twice about it. She just did it. And so when I heard that, it made me think, whenever I think about if I was kidnapped, what would I do?
That's what you would do?
I would fawn. I don't think I would have it in me to fight, because I'd be scared to die. And I definitely would probably freeze, but more than likely to keep myself alive, because that is my initial instinct, is keep myself alive. I think
that's everybody's instinct.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm fawning.
I don't think fawning would be my first in a kidnapping situation, but that is interesting to think about. How would I respond?
Yeah. So that's what brought up the people pleasing, because then I was like, girl, I think you do this in your everyday life. And I guess in my everyday life, nobody's kidnapping me, so I'm not trying to stay alive in that way.
Clearly, it's not as dramatic as being kidnapped.
But I'm trying to maintain my connections.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be abandoned in some sort of way. And so people pleasing comes up for me a lot.
Psychologically, it's still survival. It's still trying not to be whatever you consider to be social death, rejection.
100%.
I get that.
So yeah, that's what brought us to people pleasing.
Yes. So, just full disclosure, this has been an interesting conversation between me and Debbie for quite some time, just branching off into a lot of different things. But we want to first start by sharing that people-pleasing is generally a trauma response. There are articles and a lot of research out there, but people-pleasing is usually referred to as the fawning trauma response because it's so closely associated with overly appeasing behaviors and cycles of codependency. I think when we've had this conversation in our friendship and other, situations before, the codependency is probably where I relate a little bit more than the concept of people pleasing, even though they're very similar. And I'm sure others can relate to that too. So when we're getting into this concept of people pleasing and kind of working through it, some common signs I think we want to go through and kind of share with y'all is the fact that the one that stuck out to me at least was difficulty identifying one's feelings.
Okay, so this is the thing about that part, right? And y'all are just getting to know us, so you don't know us yet, right? But when you get to know me, you'll see I am a very spiritual person. I be bringing in the astrology. I be bringing in the human design. I'm talking about tarot, all of that stuff. And today, I literally was on Twitter, and we were going into human design. And if you've never heard of human design, we'll talk about it in another episode.
Couple episodes.
It's going to be more, a few episodes. We're really going to deep dive into it. But essentially, it talks about your chakra system. And part of your chakra system, you have the solar plexus. Your solar plexus can either be defined, which means you're really in touch with your emotions. You can identify, these are my feelings, and those are that other person's feelings. Or your solar plexus can be open. And if it's open, you don't know whose feelings is who. Those are people who are more likely to be empaths.
Out of balance?
Out of balance.
Would you consider that out of balance, or just a different calibration of your solar plexus?
It's
tiny tangent, but I want to go on it.
Honestly, I think that it just depends on perspective. To me, I would say, like, if your solar plexus being open doesn't automatically make it out of balance. But if you can't identify what's your emotions and somebody else's emotions, Indeed. Your solar plexus is out of balance.
I was about to say, because when you mentioned empath, I immediately was like, well, I'm an empath, and I actually feel like my solar plexus is not as open.
Yeah, I think yours might be defined.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I think
I'm like, solar plexus work. I do a lot of solar plexus work.
No, I do a lot of solar plexus work too, but it's like innately my solar plexus isn't defined. So like if I don't set emotional boundaries, which will be another episode, but if I don't set those emotional boundaries, if I don't say like, hold on, that's not how I feel. If I'm talking to somebody, I'm taking it in. I'm like, no, these my. So like that difficulty in identifying one's feelings, somebody being mad at me, I could have wholeheartedly, before I came into that conversation, felt like, nah, I stand on how I feel. I know how I feel. You ain't nobody gonna talk me. You're not gonna gaslight me. I'm in the conversation. Oh, they sad. Gaslit. I'm completely gaslit. I forget about my emotions. I tap into theirs. They're sad. They need me, da-da-da-da-da. And I start to bypass my own emotions to people please them and make them comfortable. So that one hit really hard.
Okay. What was it that you saw on, you said you were on Instagram or something, and then we kept talking.
Oh, on Twitter, a human design practitioner I follow was talking about having an emotional solar plexus. And she was having an open solar plexus. And she was like, if you don't take the time to clearly define what are your emotions before you step into any situation, you will be gaslit.
Oh, okay. It's like it's a guarantee. It is a
guarantee that you will absolve that other person's emotions.
That sounds intense. Yeah.
And she said that.
And that goes to like energetic boundaries and like we were talking about. Okay.
Literally.
So I think the one that resonated with me, like we have a couple bolded, but we can go through, as usual. I think the one that resonated with me in terms of acknowledging when other people are people pleasing, because we can get into that too, how uncomfortable it is for the person you people pleasing toward. Facts. Like that's uncomfortable too. But instinctually appeasing the other person at the first sign of conflict. Now that I was like, okay. Sounds familiar.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Growing up and just and even in social situations, like I did not like conflict because I grew up in an environment where it was always conflict. So I got to the point where I adapted, and it was like, you know what? If there's any sign of conflict, I'm gonna just do what you want to do because I don't want to deal with it. I became very passive in that sense, right? But it is considered people pleasing when you look at the definition of the behaviors. I just didn't think about it that way. To me, it was just like, oh, okay, I just don't want to deal with the conflict.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I don't know if when conflict happens, you be feeling it like in your chest, like it just feel like
where do I feel it in my body?
Yeah,
where does it show up for me? I want to say it actually shows up more in root chakra. Like. Yeah, it doesn't show up in my chest or like my stomach
pit
area.
Of your stomach?
Well, yeah, like the lower pit of my stomach. The pit
of your stomach.
And that's a social, we can get into that, if we don't have time. But
the somatic response to it. Yeah.
Well, that and, when you look at, Louise Hay's system in terms of Heal Your Life, in the bodily metaphysical patterns, right? Stomach is associated. I literally just went through this last week with my friends. Stomach is associated with dread. Stomach pop. You see,
and that's why they say you feel it in the pit of your stomach.
Yes, and so some people feel fear, and her and I were just digesting it. And it was like, oh, it's the dread. And when I think about people pleasing in some of these signs, that's the dreadful feeling. Like, because at that point, because of my experiences, I was like programmed, like, oh, conflict is happening, it's about to be some wild shit. Like, I just got dreadful, so I would just appease the person, like, okay, that's what you want. If it doesn't harm me or, you know, make me feel so uncomfortable, I'm just let you, even if I wasn't actually okay with it, it's like, okay, we could just do that.
Oh no, that's a fact, because like, I'm not, unless it's something, and I feel like people who know me probably think like I'm a conflict person. Say. Like, I like conflict, like, because I will say, like, I really enjoy transparency. And so, like, most times, like, to other people it looks like conflict, but to me it looks like, nah, I'm keeping it a band with you. I'm being honest. Like, and so I love a good conflict, because afterwards it be,
that's the Aries.
You know, it be, I have an Aries moon. It sure is. I'll be ready. I
don't have no fire in my chart.
Let's talk about it, okay?
I have like a little fire. It's like a little spark. I don't be with it.
She's all air and water. But no, like, so, but there's certain things, like, when people be coming with a certain kind of energy, and I know there is no point in arguing with you. Okay. It is not going to give me anything to argue. You're not going to hear what I'm saying.
You're more inclined to people pleasing.
I mean, yeah, I'll just be like, all right.
Well, to me, and that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, I don't know if it's a thin line in those situations, I would say. Some other examples, and let's just see how you react to these. Constantly attempting to please and appease others. I feel like we've kind of talked through that one. A perceived lack of personal identity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you measure your personality with somebody else's and whatever they want,
that's the codependency part. I feel like that's where it starts to be like, that look real codependent.
And that's why I hate codependency so much.
Why you hate it?
Literally.
That's a strong reaction to codependency.
I hate it.
Why?
I hate it. Like, because it takes away your personal freedom. Like,
it doesn't take it away. You give it away.
And you know what?
By people pleasing.
That's
by people pleasing.
That's why I hate it. Why are you giving away your personal freedom? And to me too, you know, I'm looking in the mirror.
They're trying to survive.
But it's like, why the fact that you can't survive by being yourself, that sucks. Like, that sucks. You come onto this earth alone, you die alone, and of course, while you're here, you're going to find partnerships and connections. And I hope you create interdependency. But the fact that in order to maintain this connection, you have to give up your personal identity to feel safe, that don't even sound right.
Well, I think for some people in these situations, especially if, like, again, people pleasing or fawning being a trauma response, being a trauma response, then they probably never really built a personal identity.
That was a really cute burp, by the way.
I was trying to be classy for the camera, y'all.
It was so cute. Like, y'all said, she's so classy.
Because at home, we was at home, it'd be a different situation. But I feel like that's a part of it too. Like, if you are going through having the types of traumatic experiences and responding in your natural responses to fawn from an early age, some of those people might not even have a personal identity or never really create one. So to them, it doesn't feel like giving something up because they never had it really.
But you know what that just made me think?
What?
Like, it makes me think, if you find yourself overly people pleasing, once you have identified it in yourself, like, those relationships around you where you've had to give up your personal identity in order to make those relationships work.
Okay.
Would we not consider those, like, traumatic relationships that need to end?
I wouldn't call them traumatic relationships. I would definitely say toxic, or I would consider them trauma bonds.
I would even consider, like, because I'm going back to the J.C. Duggard example. And it's like, have I been kidnapped by you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, emotionally kidnapped, mentally kidnapped by you.
No, I'm with you.
Like, physically, I'm my own person, but I've been emotionally and mentally kidnapped by you.
And manipulated. I mean, that's the core of it. It's the manipulation. But I think some people would say, depending on the level of the traumatic experience in that relationship, it can be healed and changed. I don't think automatically, because I'm people pleasing, you know, like, I'm people pleasing, we have some kind of trauma bond, we got to throw it out. I don't think that's always true, but most times I would agree it probably is. Like, you need to be done. Like,
then we're gonna get back to that, because I want to, when you say healed and changed, I want to know how. I do. I
think that's the emotional boundaries episode, if we be honest.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think we can get into it.
Okay.
I think we can get into it. So you want to share some of the challenges?
Yeah, so so being a people pleaser, like the challenges and emotions that you're going to face when you're exhibiting this trauma response of fawning over people is you'll have deep feelings of anger and guilt towards yourself.
Ooh.
Because every single time you betray yourself, you may not know it in that very moment that, oh, I'm betraying, I'm going against myself, but you will feel it.
Yeah.
Later on, you will feel it.
And it manifests in different ways. Like, yeah.
It can manifest physically, like when that person doesn't give to you in the same way that you've been given to them. And now you're sitting here like, oh my God, why did I do all that? Like, have you ever
I feel
gotten
it shows
the
up in your
ick?
body too, the ick.
The ick. Like, you be like, oh my God, I was doing too much. I was doing way too much.
Yes, I have felt that. I didn't know it was called the
I
ick.
be getting the ick. Nah, that feeling in your body where you be like, why you do that?
I'm a little disgusted with myself.
I kind of want to throw up a little bit. Like,
yeah, I've definitely been there. I was reflecting on some like past romantic relationships, and I definitely got the ick. Like, ugh, who were you? Like, who's that girl?
And this is why
we just not gonna associate with her.
No, but for real, this is why for such a long time I had a hard time dating because like I automatically had my guard up because that soft version of me, that soft side of me, who would people please, who were overly I was disgusted by the results of what she would do. Because here you are, call it ROI. I wanted a return on my investment. I'm people pleasing because I want a return on my investment, which is bad because that's manipulative within itself.
Yeah, it
right?
is. Yeah.
It's exactly what you talk about. You could tell somebody is
Yeah.
doing something.
The lack of integrity and authenticity. Is like, now I'm on the other side of it where it's like I can see it very clearly and it's very uncomfortable.
And I automatically want to push you away
it's like,
when you're
go handle that.
It's like,
don't bring that over here.
Be yourself.
Because like, who wants to be the person that has to confront someone who has codependency issues?
Seriously.
Like, that's a lot. That is
who wants to be the
lot.
person that like, now I feel obligated to throw you a surprise party and bring you a 10-tier
real person.
Cake. No, it's not a real person, but it's like, it'd be like, oh, I only known this person for 7 days and they just threw me a surprise party and gave me a 10-tier
I think that gets
cake.
to the next challenge, which is difficulty saying no to others.
Facts. Facts, like, I didn't ask you for that.
Yeah.
Or if I did, why you didn't feel comfortable saying no, I can't go. No, I'm sick. No, I'm not
just no.
with this.
Like,
or just, ooh, you about to get into it. Get into it.
Just no.
Why just
That's
no?
a pet peeve because I have a friend and it took a minute to sink in for me, but she used to say, like, she was going through a lot of transitions and transformations at the time and setting up personal boundaries, and she used to be like, no is a complete sentence. And it took a minute for me to like really apply that in my own life, where we try to, again, coming from like people pleasing, being in situations where you feel the need to appease in order to survive or be taken care of. I was like, you sure? Like, my first response was like, sure, you sure it's not no because no. But then when you start to get into boundaries, it's like, no, actually no is it. It can be it. Because you shouldn't, if somebody shouldn't be asking you to explain yourself when you're setting a boundary and making a decision for yourself.
That's so hard.
It is difficult, but it's so like clear cut. So I find that just saying no is actually easier.
So
like,
you know how we said dread is in the pit of your stomach?
You feel that?
Anxiety is in your heart.
You feel that in your heart. You feel anxious.
I just felt that in my chest. Like,
the idea of just saying no to somebody makes you anxious.
Still working on that.
Okay.
Still working on that. Like, I think I've worked on a good amount of these aspects of people pleasing because I've been trying to unlearn codependency because I find it to be so icky. But like that saying, no, I can't go, without saying, no, I can't go because, or no, I can't do that, or and with no because, this is going to sound so...
no judgment, just say it.
It feels rude.
Yeah, if
like
you're used to people pleasing.
Yeah, it feels rude.
Yeah,
like it's like that aspect of myself is definitely like the assimilation into being a particular type of feminine energy. Because I feel like no is really assertive, right? Like a man could say no, and ain't nobody gonna have no issues with that. They're not asking him why.
Ironically
you said no.
enough, I learned it more with my dog. Because dogs don't understand nothing. So, like, you have to just, it's tone, like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that feels good. Like, to just say no and let it be. Like, I don't know. It is assertive, I agree. Yeah. But then that goes into the whole other concept of, like, femininity not being characterized with a level of assertiveness.
Correct.
Like, you can be feminine and be assertive.
Correct.
And I get it. It's a lot to unlearn. It's a lot.
That big ass, it's an unlearn.
Especially when you've been taught that assertiveness is aggressiveness when it really ain't.
Yeah. Facts. Yeah. The next common challenge is difficulty setting clear personal boundaries. Mm-hmm. Yes. No, yes.
The one before that, though, I actually want to bring that one up because I feel like that's a different aspect of this. Yeah,
that's a good one.
Taking on more responsibility even when you already feel overwhelmed. Yeah. That is a behavior.
And we've had this conversation before, especially in the workplace. Like,
black women, where y'all at?
The black women in tech. No, not all of us, not just black women in tech. But like literally, like it's like you're trying to prove yourself, or like you know. You don't want to, if you ask for help, then you feel like they looking at you crazy because why would you need help with this? If they ask you to take on a project, you're like, oh, but maybe this project will get me to the next level. It's so hard to say no in the workplace.
Yeah, and I think for this one, like this particular challenge, when we were going through it, the reason it made me realize like, oh, I do have people or have had people pleasing tendencies is the overwhelmed part. Because I personally just spent a lot of time not recognizing like my level of what it takes to overwhelm me is different from everybody else's. So I was just pushing and taking on more because it's like, well, you shouldn't feel overwhelmed. Nobody else is overwhelmed. It's like, hold up. How about you just got a different level because you're empathic? How about you just got a different level because you're sensitive? And that changed everything in terms of like, oh shit, I can't be saying yes to stuff. Like I actually have to learn how to say no. I cannot please anybody or else I will burn out. Yeah. Literally went through that last year, like burnt all the way out. I had nothing for anybody. And I've been on a break for months and I still don't feel refreshed because it was just so far past of like, let me just, especially in the workplace, like, let me just accommodate everybody and like not have to confront, like you said, some of those challenges of what it means for me to show up in a very vulnerable, authentic way that says I'm overwhelmed. Like for y'all, it might make sense to lead 3 projects and still lead an extra thing outside and still make the gym and raise like, but for me, cut it in half. That's it. You know, it was a very challenging thing to have to own and recognize like, oh yeah, you are walking around people pleasing because as soon as you feel overwhelmed, the answer should be no.
Facts. And I think the key word that you said there was vulnerability. And so I think for black women, it's even harder because vulnerability is not something we see growing up. And not to generalize all of us, but for a lot of us, we have mothers who always said yes, always picked up the phone, always planned every event, always made sure dinner was on the table, and still went to work, and still made sure the house was clean. Like, so we didn't see a lot of vulnerability. We didn't see a lot of moms breaking down and saying like, I need help. So then we grow up as their black daughters that turn into black women, and we don't think that we need help or don't know how to ask for help or say that this is too much for me. So that's why I have my phone on Do Not Disturb a lot. So that when you was going to ask me, it took me like mad hours to respond anyway. So you had already asked somebody else, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
People don't even expect me to respond at this point. Like, my phone is dead.
So I'll be quick to be at work like, that's actually not within my zone of genius. But I know whose zone of genius it is within.
I'll just sign off.
Okay? That's not within my zone of genius. If I do it, I'm going to take forever to do it. You're not going to get it by the deadline. You're going to be disappointed. Like, let's not do this.
I just rather people think I'm busy. Okay. So actually, I have this going on. Meanwhile, I ain't doing nothing.
Seriously. Then I do want to, like, we touched on this, but I do want to talk about this because this is an emotion that you're going to feel taken advantage of by others. When you people please, you will feel.
It says especially in relationships.
Especially in relationships, you will feel taken advantage by others. And you will sit there and you will blame them. You will say, can't believe she ain't show up for me. Can't believe he wouldn't do this for me. Can't believe da-da-da-da-da. Can't believe. You mad at everybody around you.
When you gave your power away, which we were talking about
And it
earlier.
was you.
Yeah.
It was you. It was not them. People will take as much as you give them.
Mama, the way my mama puts it is like, because I'm guilty of this. That's why I think in the previous recording of this, we talked about like my people pleasing showed up mostly in relationships because of the things I had seen in childhood. And like, that's where I was just willing to, like, whoever I was dating or with, like, whatever they wanted. I'm just, because I didn't want to be rejected or feel abandoned. Sorry, what was my thought? Dang, I was like,
yeah, it did. And I could feel
so
it
close.
in the room. She opened the door and said, "Bye." Like, I could literally sense it because I had lost the train of thought. Because she was coming at me. I felt her coming at me. And she said, I'm out of here. I'm tired of y'all. But no, let me see if I can spark your memory.
She said she opened the door.
You hear that door crash?
Shut up. I can't stand you.
She said,
it did. It just was like, I wonder on the recording when I look at my eyes. Just be like, just went, bro. Watch it come back at the most random time.
It definitely will. But often taking advantage about others, that feeling.
Oh, what my mama say?
Yeah.
That's what it was. So my
right,
mama's
Mama
always
Bennett,
like, my mama's always like, Shauna, why you keep giving these niggas more rope to hang themselves with? And she's right though.
Nah, she's too wise.
Right. She's like, you just keep giving rope. Like they're literally hanging themselves. And you just keep shoving out the rope. Like, just stop letting people take advantage of you in a certain way. Like, just stop the rope. Give them whatever you're comfortable with. If they hang themselves, that's it.
I know
Move
somebody
on.
out here needed to, dang, my eyes started tearing up, child. That was funny. But I know somebody out here really needed to hear that stop letting people take advantage of you.
Just stop. Like, it really is just stop.
Willy-nilly out of nowhere. Unless they're lying to you and say, hey,
or kidnapping you.
All of this, or kidnapping you. Hey, I will do all of this for you if you just do this. If they're saying this and then they don't show up, then maybe they was taking
that
advantage.
Goes back to like gradually giving people, opportunities to show you who they are.
Facts.
If you do
Don't
it gradually, then you
out
are
of your
exactly
way. Correct. But like, y'all be saying like they took advantage of me and saying, instead of saying I gave them the opportunity to take advantage of me.
Or I just let it continue to happen.
And I let it. Mm-hmm. And I know one of y'all out here really needed to hear that because I'm.
What?
Take this how you want to take it. I hope it comes off as well-meaning as I hope it does. Okay?
As you intended to be. Go ahead.
A lot of you ladies, us ladies, because I'm a woman too, don't know how to take accountability for letting people take advantage of us, for letting people in our lives that shouldn't be there,
who you looking
constantly giving to them. If that message resonated with you, if any of this resonated with you, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. Be accountable. It's not he took advantage of me. Or she took advantage of me. It's I gave them the space and opportunity to take advantage of me, and I continued to let it happen, even though I knew the warning signs, even though it did not feel right in my intuition, even though it wasn't in alignment with my values and beliefs. That's the actual sentence. And when you take accountability, that's when your life changes. Your life does not change staying in a victim mentality and blaming other people for what is going on. I'm just saying.
Just remember, if you need a short version, just stop giving them rope. That's all you got to do.
That's it.
But that makes me think about something we have in here with the concept of like people pleasing being related to your self-worth, that some people might have the strong desire to be needed and believing that they have a better chance to get that affection and validation from people who need them. You know, so it's like you're doing these things and you're extending under the guise of them needing you when they really don't. And so then in turn you start to feel when you don't get the affection and validation you were looking for, then it's like, oh, they took advantage of me. Oh, yeah.
And I mean, with the self-worth thing, like, I think that being needed, being tied to our self-worth, like, that's something we learn at a very young age.
Oh yeah,
at a very young age.
I feel like if you look at like human development, it's probably early in there.
Literally, where like, you know, that idea of feeling needed by your mom as she's doing, and I bring up mom because I think a lot of us talk about daddy issues and we talk about the father wound, but a lot of us don't talk about that mother wound, and having mommy issues. And your mom could be in your life and you still have mommy issues. That mother wound is very deeply ingrained in a lot of us. And when you are worried, like your mom may have rejected you in childhood if you didn't do something she wanted you to do. Yeah. Got an attitude with you. Maybe she gave you the cold shoulder. Maybe she badgered you in some way. And so now you're making the connection like, so if I don't do what this person wants me to do, I'm going to be badgered. I'm going to be rejected in ways that feel uncomfortable for me. So that I can maintain this attachment with a person who is literally fueling my development, I have to please her. And so let me do these things to please her. And now your self-worth is tied to, let me continue to please this person. So that self-worth is absolutely related.
Was that similar to your own experience? Like recognizing that the desire to people please was tied to your self-worth?
Oh, for sure. For sure. I literally, as you were talking, I was thinking about how the person who I was 7 years ago is not the person who I am today.
Girl, I just give it 6 months.
Facts. Yesterday. Yesterday. Okay. But no, like 7 years ago, fresh out of college, when I'm thinking about how I formulated my relationships, the way I made connections, the way I showed up in those connections, it was a lot of, can you please like me? And let me make sure you like me. And let me investigate if you don't like me. And if you don't like me, investigate. I was in phones, you know. Oh, I don't do that no more. But I would investigate. I want to know, are they talking bad about me or do they actually like me? Like, but like my, it was tied to my self-worth. I didn't like me. And so I needed other people to like, and I thought I liked me, because you can spend a whole lot of time saying, oh no, I love myself.
Saying, but not showing.
But the fruit of the tree is what really determines what that tree is.
So what was your fruit?
The fruit that I was producing then were toxic relationships, friendships, and romantic relationships. Toxic, where I did not have a voice, where my values and beliefs didn't matter. It was never about Thevi. It was about everyone around her. How could I people please? Where if I was upset, how could we pacify this woman's emotions in through activities that really truly display manipulation, because people saw me as a pawn in their lives.
Oh damn.
Okay, and that wasn't their fault.
Yeah,
that was me.
You set it up.
That's how I set it up. Right. That's what accountability looks like. I set it up to be that way. And then one day, and you know, and I say 7 years.
I was going to say, what triggered the shift?
I say 7 years because I literally spent 7 years doing the work. I got into astrology. I got into, that's why my spiritual journey is so important. And
doing the work is like you spent the 7 years becoming who you are now.
Becoming who I am now. Like literally reading the books.
It takes that much time.
Listening to the podcast. Getting on the YouTube.
Trying the things that you hear.
And literally seeing like, okay, what effect does that have on this? Oh, maybe if I try. Literally.
What's my version of saying no? When do I need to cut the rope? You know, like
experiment.
Just experiment. Yeah.
Experiment. Like your life is an experiment. You're supposed to try the new things and do the things and see how it shows up. So I spent 7 years doing that. And today's price, it's not yesterday's price. Okay? That's it.
We talking luxury tax? Like, okay. What's luxury the inflation?
And property taxes. Call me the IRS because I'm coming for my money. All right?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have like back taxes when it come to me. Like, I would be rich if I start collecting. So some questions in here I do want to talk through a little bit more related to people pleasing. And it's related to something you brought up a second ago, which is what prevents you from being assertive. I think that would be worth talking about.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
Oh my god.
Or at least one of them. We can shift if we need to shift, but because you brought up assertiveness and the concept of your feminine identity around that, why are you tensing up, girl?
Because, and it's so crazy because it's like, yo, I do like conflict. I do. I'm telling y'all right now.
I'm glad you admitting it and saying it out loud. Please hold Thevi accountable because I be out here like Thevi. And she's like, no, this Thebby.
No, I really do like conflict.
She like it.
I want the smoke.
You enjoy
I
it. Right. It's
smoke.
entertainment for you.
Right. And, I used to be the person I'd be like, well, I'm going to bring the conflict to the table. Now I wait for the conflict to come to me.
You're just waiting for it to stir.
Preparing, collecting the notes, taking the time. Preparing.
Setting it up.
Okay.
So what does that have to do with the assertiveness?
So the reason why I started waiting now is because I realized that my reactions, it wasn't giving assertive, it was giving aggressive.
Okay. So you went too far to the other extreme.
I went a little bit too far into it. Okay. And it would always blow up in my face. No matter how nice. And when I say aggressive.
Sounds messy.
It's not like
when you said that, I immediately felt what we talked about earlier, which was like appease to avoid conflict. Mm-hmm. I was immediately like, what you want? I felt that in my spirit. Like, just calm it all the way down. I don't want to deal with it.
And it's not like I'd be like this pointing fingers. I like to maintain a certain, voice and composure when I'm talking to people. But it'll just be like, you need to do this, and you never do this, and I'm just so, and I can't believe you, and that's aggressive. That's aggressive. Mm-hmm. You heard a lot of use.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Assertiveness, which is something that I'm learning, and I'm only I'm learning because there's like I'm now being presented with more how do you say, dominant energies around me. Okay. Which is now making me get to more of a submissive feminine energy, and that submissive feminine energy,
even in your friendships,
even in my friendships, which means that I have to be assertive because I'm not looking for conflict now, at least not unhealthy conflict. Yeah. I'm looking for a healthy ask, if you like to put it that way. Okay. That's what I call assertiveness now. It's a healthy ask. It's, hey, I need more of this from you. Okay. It's an I need thing.
I think my experience with assertiveness is the opposite, but I came to the same place as you. Of a healthy ask. Of like not being aggressive. So, okay, I did have anger issues, y'all. I'm just I did have anger issues at one point. But I feel like I also did the same thing where I went to the other extreme of like never asking for what I needed or never speaking up for myself, right? Where it's like the idea of even being assertive felt aggressive. Mm-hmm. But I still got to the same place as you, which is like, what's a healthy ask in this? Like your needs, validating myself and learning how to meet my own needs in a way that allowed me to see the difference between what I can accommodate and what actually is something I need from the other person or the relationship.
Absolutely. And in hearing you say that, once you ask for what you need, you've done what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, you can't be out here, listen, y'all.
Don't badger people into giving you what you need.
That's manipulation.
Okay. Let them be themselves.
Be ready for the no. If it's a no, it's a no. But at least you ask. Yeah.
Be ready for that's just not in their character.
Or they don't have capacity.
They don't have that's just not how they move.
Mm-hmm. Or they just don't want to. Like, that's okay too.
Or they accept people for who they are, because once you get to accepting people for who they are, you now make room for people who are in alignment with you
to come into your life,
to come
and flourish, and for y'all to flourish. Like, seriously, y'all, I met Thebby a month, the month that I like really released the friendship, and it was that exact process that she's describing, where it was just like asking for what I needed in the friendship, recognizing that person just wouldn't or just did not want to show up for me, being able to release it and make room to the point where I was really like praying and affirming. And then I just randomly met this woman at we just had brunch together, that was sharing each other's lives, like the first hour of meeting each other.
We didn't plan brunch together.
Right, we just met at an event. We literally
just met at the bar where we was having brunch and
got into life.
How did the conversation even start?
Girl, I think I started it. I think because you were sitting there and I think you were ordering food.
Wine. I was ordering wine, and I was going to say it was something. Trying to give me a suggestion.
Yeah, I always just be in people's business. That's the problem. Like, girl, what you eating?
And I wanted the suggestion. Like, I literally, and it was something. Receptive to it. Yeah.
Or I was like asking about the menu or something.
Yeah, something like that. And then like literally when I tell you first conversation,
we got into it.
It flowed.
We got into it.
But yeah, so I think like right now it's just when it comes to assertiveness, it's me learning how to just ask for what I need.
How do you do that? Because that's one of the questions we have here too. How do you ask for what you need? How can you? What's your suggestion
Great question.
for the folks?
First of all, you have to know what you believe in and what you value, right? Okay. You have to know what you believe in and what you value. Because, like, I could, if me, like, asking you, like, Shauna, I need you to show up to every single birthday I have until the end of our friendship. Until we die, you better be at every single birthday.
Until we die, yeah.
Right? Why am I asking for that? What is in my value system? What are my beliefs that are making me ask for that? Because that could be an overextended ask when really what I need to ask you for is, hey, Shauna, I'd love for us to spend more time together. Can we come up with a schedule so that I can just feel more of your presence? I need to feel more reciprocity in this relationship. You see what I'm saying? And that's it. And you see how that ask is completely different than I need you to show up for every birthday.
Yeah.
Like, so I assess, like, what are my, when I'm asking something, what am I really asking? What is the actual need? Is it recognition? Is it validation? Is it support?
So spending that time with yourself.
Spend that time with yourself before you just go rushing in to ask somebody for something. And then once I've assessed what it is I'm really looking for, I simply say, like, hey, can we talk? And I know sometimes that makes people uncomfortable because they be like, oh, shoot. What we got to talk about? It really brings anxiety into people. But if you now start to create a pattern of, oh, no, this isn't a conversation where I'm trying to drag you down and tell you about all the stuff that you don't do. This is a conversation where I just want to ask you for something that I need and want to see if it's something that's within your bandwidth to do. And if it's not within that person's bandwidth to do, I then be like, okay, I have to accept that, right? Can't battle that, can't combat that. I have to accept it for what it is. And then I have to make a decision from there. How close in my sphere of influence can I allow this person to be if this is a need they can't meet?
That's what I was going to say. I think my process of how I come to ask for what I need involves that prioritization first. Like, getting clear on the need, but before I go to the person, based on what the need is, prioritizing it and determining whether I can meet some of it myself.
That's good.
Like if it's a need for appreciation, I think you mentioned validation, right? Like usually what I find in my own experiences is that, if I'm seeking something from someone else, is because they're either reflecting something to me that I see as a gap, or I haven't given myself permission to meet that need. So it's coming up through like, oh, I want Debbie to be more accountable. And it's like, were you not being accountable, Chantel? Were you not being accountable to yourself and to other people? And then as soon as I identify that, I'm able to see the difference between what I need, what I can accommodate for myself to meet that need, and what actually needs to come from Debbie. Yeah. I mean, that's just personally how I've struggled with needs in the past, where like putting it all on the other person and not giving myself, empowering myself actually to recognize like God put you here as a whole perfect, y'all ain't see my tattoo, whole perfect complete being.
That's very valid. And what I'm liking about what you said is the reflection part.
I do a lot of reflection.
Every relationship around you is a mirror.
Yep.
That's the purpose of reflection. Every relationship is a mirror. Like, you are not too different than the person
you having issues with.
Literally. Like, it's
showing up somewhere else in your life.
Exactly. Yep. And so it could be like, that mirror could either be like, sometimes you look at a mirror and that reflection is like, so I'm over giving, right? They're not giving enough. Why am I over giving? Instead of this person isn't giving enough. That reflection is, why am I over giving? Why am I not giving it to myself? Where am I?
And then once I give it to myself and show up for myself in the way that I think this person should be, I can actually distinguish.
And now you can look at that relationship for real.
And then, like you were saying, then categorize them. That's why I was like, I have to prioritize it first, because that's how I know where you fit in.
Yeah, that's good.
Because then I have an actual idea of like, what's the difference of what I can do for myself and what you're bringing to the relationship.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, I think that's a big part of the self-love journey. Yeah. Is like, you can't expect everyone to give you everything.
Yeah, and you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. There's not
It's
one
a hard pill to swallow,
world.
though. I won't lie. That's a pretty hard pill to swallow in our society.
Because we look outside of ourselves like, your man has to be, your man cannot be your everything.
Or
I'm
your
sorry to say, or your
friends.
best friend
Yeah.
can't be. She's not going to be there for every emergency. She can't always pick up the phone for you. There's going to be some days where your best friend's going to need that day for herself, and you're having an emergency, and she literally will not have the emotional capacity to worry about. You can't take that personally.
Yeah.
You got to give her the space to do that, and you need to have an ecosystem.
Why you say it so hard?
Ecosystem community, because that, especially in the
Yeah.
United States, we live in such an individualistic culture. That's why we be looking for one other person to complete us in one aspect.
Yeah.
I have a whole community of people to lean on.
Yeah.
A whole community. Depending on what I'm going through, I know exactly who to reach out to. For example,
You're really great about that. Yeah.
facts. If I'm going through anything that has to do with like, either like it's like a spiritual aspect, or like I'm like tapping into intellectualizing my emotions and trying to find the root of the issue, I'll talk to Shauna. I'll talk to my Virgo friend about it. I'll talk to my Libra friend about it, because they're just real good at like being like, okay, explain this to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what I'm hearing you say is that, and they're like, I will deep dive through the questions that they're asking me, through the mirror that they're holding up to me. When it comes to asking anything about romantic relationships, no shade, no tea, because there's some single people out here who are very intelligent, but I'm asking my married friend. She's married.
Touche.
She got a man. Okay.
The fruit of her tree
The
reflects.
fruit of her tree reflects her life. It
Yeah.
reflects that's the person I should be asking that question to. So I'm taking relationship advice from her and her husband.
Yeah.
Like, and so I have an ecosystem of people who I tap into. I don't just lean on one person. And so I allow them the space to flow how they need to flow without creating a codependent relationship. And that's why I hate codependency.
Okay.
Because
Still-
that person misses a phone call, and all of a sudden you're mad at them because you ain't have nobody else to dissect this with, when you should have created an ecosystem.
Yeah. So last question to talk through. I'm going to skip the closing question, and we can just put that on the screen.
Yeah. Or like in a bio or something.
Yeah, because I really want to talk through this last one in our discussion, and then get into you can get into the recommendation and affirmation. So how do you feel when you don't practice self-care or don't express your opinions and wants?
That's such an interesting question, because like the first thing that came to my mind was small.
What? Oh, you feel small. I was like, what's
Yeah.
small? I'm dumb.
Never that.
I know. It was a slow moment,
But
for real.
no, like I feel small.
Yeah.
Like insignificant. When I don't allow myself to express myself, I feel like it's almost like you're making yourself not matter.
Yeah.
That's how it feels. Like I'm making myself not matter. And that could be, I know people be like,
So your normal experience of yourself is big and expensive.
yeah, it's big and expansive.
Yeah.
And it's usually like my aura is penetrating, and usually people are receptive to it. They're like, oh, I can take in this energy. They like this energy. It's penetrating, but it's uplifting. Like,
Yeah.
or it's penetrating, but it's transparent. It's deep, right?
Okay.
But when I'm not practicing self-care, when I'm not prioritizing myself, pouring into myself, making sure my cup is full, and then I'm also not expressing my opinions and my thoughts, it's almost like my aura is penetrating this way, and somebody held up a wall to it, and so now it can only
feel
get this
blocked.
far.
Yeah.
It can't get far at all, and that feels small. It feels restrictive. What about you?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think for me, I resonate with the idea of small, but not in the same way, because my I'm not as extroverted and, openly expressive. But I feel like my energy is, like my actual aura when I walk through spaces, like people feel it even if I'm not verbalizing anything. So I do get the smallness aspect from that perspective. But for me, it's actually balance. Like I feel so out of balance when I'm not honest with myself, when I'm out of integrity. Because that's how I read this question. How do you feel when you're out of integrity?
That's valid. That's exactly what it is.
You're not taking care of yourself. You're not expressing your opinions and your desires. Like, you're not really giving any space to that. It feels imbalanced and disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel connected to the people around me. I tend to feel like, I don't know how to explain the imbalance part. It just feels like because I'm naturally introverted, like it feels like I don't have the range, but it's not restrictive. I don't know how to, I was like, I don't know how to explain that, because it's a real delicate balance for me when it comes to being around people and taking on other people's energy versus like being clear in my own and projecting my own energy.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of like I take on more of other people when I'm not. That's how I feel in balance. I'm taking on more of other people's, like I'm in, I guess technically you could call it like being in that people pleasing kind of default position where like I'm prioritizing everybody but me. So that feels off kilter. It feels like, okay, I'm gonna fall over here soon. Like I can't stand up. I can't, it just unstable.
Because we talked about like how you have gotten to a place where like you used to be like, okay, I got to prioritize other people, like no matter how it feels.
And now I'm the opposite.
And now you're the direct opposite where you be like, no, I'm introverted. Like if I, I'm cool
it's a
with
no
only
for
seeing
me.
you every other week.
I be
like,
at home with me and my dog.
Like she's like, no, we don't got to talk on the phone all the time. Like I'm cool with that. And so I could see how like out of balance for you is like, you're just doing what other people tell you to do.
It's out of flow, Even though really, I'm used to a certain amount of time investing in myself and pouring into myself, like you said. So
that's so valid.
Yeah.
All right. I like those questions.
Listen, we got good questions, y'all. When you have a coaching background, powerful questions will make this podcast.
And take the time to ask yourself these questions too.
For sure.
But actually, you know what? I had something to ask you really quickly. I know we running out of time. But
y'all, that be like to talk. Okay. What's up?
So you asked how do we feel like when we don't practice self-care and don't express our opinions at once. How do you get yourself back into balance when you're out of balance?
Oh, that is actually a good follow-up question. That is a great follow-up question. It depends on, I think, it depends on the situation. I guess what I'm trying to say is it depends on where I am and like what my levels are. Because my levels do change. Like sometimes I'm in a season of like needing more connection than I would normally or I have previously needed, or wanting, like my desires are driving me toward different things in my life. So usually it's dependent on that. Like whatever my highest needs are at the time. So say, for example, when it comes to this concept of people pleasing, I'm not taking care of myself or expressing what I need in a relationship or in a situation, it usually is that process that we just talked about. As soon as I identify what I can take responsibility for and meeting that need, I take action. So if I'm like, you know what, I need validation. Okay, girl, what's gonna make you feel validated? You need to put affirmations up on your wall. You need to call people and be like, what you love about me, like whatever it ends up being. Like, do you need to write this down and like look at it every day? Like, do you need to go through old journals? I'm just like randomly throwing out stuff, but it's like I immediately take action on whatever it is required to satisfy that need for myself. If it's something physically, like, okay, get your ass up and go to the gym.
Get those dopamine.
Yeah. And then I'm able to say, okay, girl, you know what? I've met that need. I still want to hang out with Debbie. Like, so it's like, hey, Debbie, can we hang out more? And then it's come from a more balanced place. Because I've taken care of myself. I've been honest about, I'm back in integrity with myself, depending on what that need is.
I really like that, because if you really peeping what Shauna is saying, if you really peeping it, she is saying, you invest in yourself, figure it out with yourself first. Then you go ask for what you need. It's really like, it's that simple.
That's how it feels to me.
It's that simple. Because, and the reason why I asked you that is because when I was reading this, I was like, oh, they're going to think like, somebody out there going to think, oh, that means I need to rush to express my opinions at once, immediately.
Oh, I got you.
No. It said self-care first. Right? Invest in yourself first and then go and express those desires and those wants. So
I got you.
Great response.
All right, so get into the recommendation and the affirmation for these people so we can wrap up.
Okay, so we end every single podcast with a recommendation and affirmation, right? It's not just for you to listen to us. It's so that we can give you applicable, what?
Applicable what? Shit, I don't know.
Like
practical,
you know what I'm saying? Like, so we can give you something so you can use it, so you can experiment and actually apply it to your life. And
find your own joy.
There you go.
Yes.
So our first recommendation is to sit with yourself and learn what drives your people pleasing and how it impacts your relationship. Once you figure out what is driving your people pleasing, is it your anxiety? Do you have a fear of abandonment? Have you were just raised that way? Definitely suggest looking into attachment styles. We'll have an episode in that on the future, but look into your attachment styles. Like, what is driving me to people please? What about this relationship situation, workplace, whatever it is that's driving me to please them and come outside of myself? And how is it actually impacting that relationship? Once you figure that out, spend the next week pouring into yourself every single time that wound gets triggered. So instead of, I feel the need to people please, let me go do this thing to support this person, to make them like me, to whatever, pour that back into yourself. So if you are like rushing to people please somebody, like, you feel them withdraw their energy a little bit. So you're like, oh, I got to overcompensate. I need to probably call them more. Maybe if I send flowers. Or maybe
send yourself flowers. That's the response.
Send yourself flowers. Okay? Pour into yourself. Write your self affirmations. Call yourself.
That's what I was about to say. I actually used to do that.
Do what?
Send myself cards.
Oh.
And like actually put them in the mail.
Better show Shauna love.
Or like make video audio recordings. Like I call myself, because I have a friend who does beautiful. That. She does like voice journaling, and it's like talking to yourself. It's like you were to call yourself.
That's beautiful.
So y'all can try that too.
Because you can really look back on it and see like what you've needed throughout your time. I really like that. So that is the first recommendation. You want to do the second one?
Yeah. So the next one is taking the opportunity to listen to your body. When your intuition says no, when you feel the no, when it comes up as a no in response to somebody's request or your desire to people please, you want to pause to honor yourself. And then we encourage you to explore somatic practices. And so this would be any practice that uses the mind-body connection to help you survey your internal experience and listen to signals from your body about areas of pain, discomfort, or imbalance. So some examples of these somatic practices could be hugging yourself, one that I find you probably, if you take yoga, you probably experienced this one.
I know some me cry before.
Yeah, I know some yoga instructors are like, hug yourself. I have one that does that. Like I think it's the Monday night class. She always says that. But it actually is a somatic practice that allows you to like pause and actually feel your physical and emotional response to that versus, someone else hugging you. Conscious breathing is one. Body scans. So if you're into meditations, body scans are something that you probably have encountered before, but those are really good somatic practices. When I know earlier we were talking about like where you feel it in your chest, in your stomach, like the solar plexus or whatever chakra. Body scans are really good for that, to see where the tension is building up, and then that can give you insight into what is actually causing the discomfort if you're able to identify what's associated within your body. And then they have something called safe space visualizations. Look it up. I actually really like it. I think that is more for the people who people please and have more traumatic experiences that drive them to people please and that are a bit fresher. But the safe space visualization is like you literally create a space in your mind. And when you feel triggered or you feel that sense of like, I want to say no in this situation, but I don't feel confident, you can go to that space. I would recommend when you do the visualization to like envision it as a safe, empowering space to allow you to say no, right? Like you could take that safe space visualization and do a lot of different things with it. But I find that in the research, it was saying it's, usually used with people who have like severe traumatic experiences.
I like that.
That's a good one, though.
I take myself to a field of butterflies.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, because
what kind of flowers are in or there's a flower field?
Yeah, it's like lavenders.
I was immediately like lavender or sunflowers.
Yeah,
I love sunflowers.
Sunflowers too.
Oh my God, that's a great visualization.
A beautiful
actually,
blend.
like just frolicking in the field, the sun shining down on you. I love it.
It's a beautiful.
That feels
place
very safe, even though it's actually out in the open. It feels real safe.
But it does. It feels safe. And then we're going to end this episode with an affirmation. We'll always have an affirmation for you. And this affirmation is, I support myself in making the right choices for me. I'll repeat that one more time. I support myself in making the right choices for me. So when we choose to put ourselves first, we're saying, I value my wants, I value my needs, I value my desires, and I believe I am valuable enough to do so. I prioritize my being. I am important. I belong in this space. I can take up this space. I can ask for what I want. I can ask for what I need, and I deserve it. Okay.
Period. All right. That's a powerful one to end on.
This was a good episode.
I think so too. Go, Debbie.
Yay.
All right, y'all. We will see you next time on InJoy.
Yep. Bye.